It had been over a century since humanity first ventured into the stars. We had traversed galaxies, conquered planets, and encountered species that ranged from curious and peaceful to hostile and calculating. Yet, for all our advancements, we had always been considered the underdogs, beneath the great interstellar empires, the ancient races that looked down on us with a mixture of amusement and disdain. But the galaxy didn't expect humans to retaliate. The harsh hiss of the oxygen venting through the ship's hull broke the silence as Captain Naomi Hunter stood before the massive viewport of the Vigilance, a warship in the United Earth Fleet, gazing at the swirling nebula below. The stars were distant, cold, and untouchable, but she knew the true war was just beginning. "Captain, the convoy is ready to depart. We've patched the last of the comms," reported Lieutenant Marcus Reyes, his voice edged with the same tension that gripped the rest of the crew. Naomi nodded, her eyes still fixed on the galaxy ahead. "We've been pushed to the edge. This is our chance to strike back, to show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." She turned sharply, her expression hardening. The crew of the Vigilance had seen the worst of what the galaxy had to offer. The Terran War had shown them that. The battle-hardened men and women on board weren't the same as they were a decade ago. They were stronger, more determined. And they knew that they would never be the prey again. The attack on Earth had been swift. A joint alliance of alien factions, the Varix Dominion and the Thalcor Consortium, had decimated half of humanity's defensive fleet in one fell swoop. The strategic bombing of cities, the mass bombardment of orbital stations, and the collapse of Earth's communication grid were only the beginning of their merciless campaign. Naomi had seen it all, the destruction, the death, but it wasn't until she saw her home, New York City, in ruins, that she truly understood the gravity of their ambition. The aliens had thought they could break humanity's spirit. They were wrong. "Tell the Admiral we're moving out in 5. Full speed," Naomi commanded as she straightened her jacket and turned toward the tactical room. The star charts were alive with data, symbols flashing, planets blinking, lines denoting jumps to uncharted space. She had a strategy now, a precise one. There would be no mistakes this time. She had spent months studying the movements of their enemies, waiting for the perfect opportunity. It had come when their fleets were spread thin across the galaxy. Humanity would strike where they least expected it. Reyes followed her closely, nodding. "Aye, Captain. They're going to feel this one." Naomi smiled grimly. The Vigilance wasn't just another warship. It was the pride of the United Earth Fleet, a vessel capable of taking on much more than the alien fleets had bargained for. Its stealth systems were state-of-the-art, its weapons overclocked and ready for a fight. But it wasn't the ship or its technology that would win the war. It was humanity's relentless will to survive. As the ship leapt from the launch bay, a deep hum filled the air, vibrating through Naomi's chest. The Vigilance was alive, and so were its crew. "I've intercepted a Varix signal," Reyes said, his eyes flicking over the data as he worked. "They're setting up a defense perimeter around the Vexera system. They don't know we're here yet. But they will." Naomi's eyes glinted with cold determination. "Good. Let's make sure they regret that." Her comms officer, Lieutenant Lana Yu, reported in. "Captain, all systems are online. We're cloaked and ready to jump. Proceed. And make sure our fleet is in position. We hit them at the heart of their command." The plan was simple, too simple for the arrogance of the alien empires to fathom. They believed that humanity was weak, fragile, and still reeling from the devastation of the war. They thought the humans they had left behind were nothing but a broken remnant, scavenging for scraps in a galaxy that no longer had any place for them. But Naomi knew better. She knew the nature of humanity. The ability to endure. To adapt. And above all, to fight back when it seemed all hope was lost. The Vigilance glided effortlessly through the darkened corridors of space, its cloaking devices rendering it invisible to any passing ships. Naomi could feel the tension building in her crew. Everyone knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a tactical strike. It was a turning point in the war. If they succeeded, humanity would have a foothold in the galactic struggle. If they failed, she didn't want to think about failure. We're nearing the Vexera system, Reyes announced. The fleet is in position. The Varix and Thalcor forces are still unaware of our presence. It's a perfect opening. Naomi took a steadying breath. Activate the disruptors. With a soft beep, the ship's systems hummed into action. The Vigilance's weapon systems powered up, and the ship's cloaking device flickered slightly, but not enough to expose them. Coordinates locked, Captain, Reyes said, his voice low with anticipation. Launch the torpedoes. And give them everything we've got. The ship's weapons fire tore through the dark expanse, striking with pinpoint precision. The alien forces didn't know what hit them. Their fleets, which had once considered themselves invincible, were ripped apart by the brutal force of humanity's retaliation. The Vigilance was a spear thrust into the heart of the enemy, and the galaxy would soon know that humanity wasn't as weak as they thought. Back on the command deck, Naomi watched as their first salvo obliterated the enemy's defenses. The Varix and Thalcor ships, once so confident in their superiority, were now scrambling in chaos. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't prepared for the humans to fight back. She leaned forward, her eyes locked onto the view screen. This is just the beginning. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. And now they would learn the hard way. The Vigilance soared deeper into the Vexera system, its stealth systems masking its every movement. Naomi stood at the helm, her eyes locked on the tactical display, watching as the enemy fleet splintered under the weight of their initial assault. The Varix and Thalcor had been caught off guard, an easy victory, if only it were the end. But it wasn't. Captain, Rhea's voice broke through the hum of the ship's engines. They're regrouping. The remaining fleets are consolidating near Vexera Prime. It looks like they're calling for reinforcements. Naomi didn't flinch. They can call for all the reinforcements they want. We're not backing down now. She knew the enemy's next move before Reyes even spoke it. The aliens would be furious, desperate to save face after the humiliation of the initial ambush. But humanity had a secret weapon they didn't yet understand, the human spirit. Resilient. Unpredictable. Relentless. Deploy the drones, Naomi ordered, her voice steady, unwavering. I want our fleet in position to hit them from every angle. No escape routes. Reyes nodded and relayed the command. Naomi didn't need to look to know the drones were already streaming out of the ship, tiny but deadly, programmed to create chaos, draw fire, and give the main fleet an opening. Every ship in their arsenal had a part to play, none were simply cannon fodder. The war had just become real, but Naomi had long since accepted that her people weren't just fighting to win, they were fighting to remind the galaxy that humanity wasn't to be underestimated. It was no longer a question of survival, it was about reclaiming their place in the cosmos. Their place at the table, next to the empires that had long mocked their rise. The silence of space was deafening, save for the low hum of the Vigilance's engines. Naomi leaned against the command console, watching the unfolding battle. She had been in many engagements before, but this felt different. There was an urgency to it, a weight that pressed on her chest. Not just because they were up against the galaxy's most formidable forces, but because humanity was proving itself. There was no turning back now. A flashing alert pulled her from her thoughts. Lieutenant Yu's voice rang out across the deck. Captain, we've detected a massive force exiting hyperspace near Vexera Prime. It's massive, Captain. At least 30 capital ships, Varix class. They mean business. Get us into position. No, Naomi commanded, her voice hard and quick. Prepare for a full engagement. The Vigilance surged forward, the crew working in unison as they navigated through the minefield of debris and wreckage they had created in the first wave. Naomi's mind raced with strategy, but there was no time for hesitation. The enemy was coming, and they were coming fast. The bridge trembled as the ship's weapons systems came to life. Naomi glanced at Reyes, who stood by the tactical display. They're spreading out, he said, scanning the data. Trying to divide us. Naomi didn't need the warning. The strategy was already in motion. Cut through their lines. We need to separate their forces, Take out the flagships first. If we can cripple their command, the rest will scatter. The ship's engines roared, and the Vigilance shot toward the enemy, its weapons blazing with deadly precision. Explosions rocked the battlefield as their first volley of torpedoes struck home. One Varix flagship shattered into pieces, a fireball that consumed everything in its path. Naomi didn't flinch. She wasn't there to watch explosions, she was there to fight. Captain, Reyes called out urgently. The Thalcor fleet is entering the system. They've sent reinforcements. We've got 2 more fleets on our tail. Naomi's fingers tightened around the arm of her chair. Then we make sure they never reach us. She turned to Lieutenant Yu, who was monitoring their communications channels. Activate the EMP pulses. Shut down their tracking systems. We don't need them targeting our weak points. EMP pulses active, Yu replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. A massive shockwave of energy pulsed outward from the Vigilance, slamming into the enemy fleet. Varix and Thalcor ships floundered, their weapon systems flickering in and out of power. For a moment, they were blind, vulnerable. Now was the time. Naomi gave the order, and the Vigilance closed the distance, launching another barrage of torpedoes and heavy plasma rounds. It was a dance of destruction, a fight to the death where only the strongest would survive. Humanity's ingenuity had led them to this point, and now, it was time for their foes to learn what humanity could do when cornered. The battle raged on, each moment more intense than the last. Naomi could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins as she commanded the crew, their efficiency unmatched. The aliens, for all their advanced technology, were beginning to falter. The Varix, with their vast fleets and superior firepower, were now at a disadvantage. The Thalcor, who had once held sway over countless systems, were disoriented. The Vigilance had become a force they hadn't expected, a force they couldn't seem to outmatch. Captain, we've successfully divided their forces, Reyes reported, his voice tinged with satisfaction. The Varix fleet is retreating, and the Thalcor are disorganized. We've got them on the ropes. Naomi allowed herself a rare smile, but she didn't let it linger. This battle wasn't over. Not yet. Prepare the final strike, she ordered. We take out their command ships. We end this here and now. The Vigilance moved swiftly through the heart of the enemy formation, its weapons pounding the alien fleets into submission. Naomi's crew was relentless, their focus unyielding. She watched as one by one, the enemy command ships began to fall, their shields flickering out, their hulls buckling under the force of humanity's might. Then, the moment came. The Thalcor flagship, the Iridian, loomed before them, its dark hull spewing fire. Naomi's finger hovered over the trigger. This would be the final blow, the moment when the galaxy realized the full extent of humanity's power. Fire! Naomi commanded, her voice a low, lethal whisper. The Vigilance unleashed its full arsenal, a barrage that tore through the heart of the flagship. The Iridian shield shattered like glass, and then, in a flash of light, it was gone. The Thalcor fleet scattered in panic. Naomi exhaled slowly, watching the devastation unfold. The battle was won. For now. But the war had only just begun. The aftermath of the battle left Naomi with an eerie sense of quiet. The battlefield that had moments ago been filled with the deafening roar of weapons and explosions now hung in an unnatural stillness. The Vigilance floated among the wreckage, the twisted remains of Varix and Thalcor ships scattered across the dark void like the carcasses of fallen beasts. Their once imposing fleets now reduced to smoking husks, silent testament to humanity's fury. Naomi stood alone in the command deck, staring out at the wreckage. The victory had been decisive, but it came at a cost. Humanity had made its mark, but the galaxy's great empires wouldn't simply let this go. The Vigilance was damaged, and several of her crew members had lost their lives in the chaos. The weight of the war, of what had been lost, pressed down on her shoulders. Captain! Rhea's voice broke through her thoughts, his tone soft but urgent. We've received a transmission from Earth. It's the Council. Naomi turned, her expression unreadable. Put it through. The face that appeared on the screen was familiar, Admiral Orson Klein, a grizzled veteran of the Terran War, now serving as the highest-ranking officer of the United Earth Fleet. His eyes were tired, his brow furrowed with concern. "Naomi," Klein began, his voice tight. "We've been monitoring the situation, and we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. The Variks and Thalkor haven't taken kindly to your actions. They've rallied their allies. This war is far from over." Naomi's jaw tightened. "I know. I expected as much. Then you also know the next phase won't be as easy. The fleets we've been facing are nothing compared to what's coming. The Zalari Dominion, the Aerath Hegemony, they've all joined the alliance against us." Naomi didn't flinch. She had expected this. The galaxy's powers would not take the uprising of the Terran Federation lightly. But she wasn't about to back down. "We've been underestimated for too long," she replied, her voice hard. "They thought they could crush us, that humanity was nothing more than a footnote in galactic history. I won't let them forget that mistake." Klein's gaze softened for a moment. "I know you won't, Naomi. But this will be different. This isn't just a fight for survival. It's a fight for control of the galaxy itself. You need to be prepared for the cost. We all do." Naomi paused, absorbing the weight of his words. Klein had always been pragmatic, but there was something in his tone now, a warning. She wasn't sure if it was the gravity of the war, or the personal losses they'd endured, but she could feel the shift. This was no longer just a campaign, it was a war for humanity's very future. "We'll hold the line," she said finally, her voice steady. "I'll make sure of it." Klein nodded, then the transmission cut out. The hours following the transmission were a blur of calculations, battle plans, and preparations for the next wave of conflict. The Vigilance was still operational, but the damage to the ship was severe enough that repairs would take time. Naomi had ordered the crew to rest while engineers worked around the clock to restore critical systems. The war was far from over, and Naomi knew it. The alliances being formed against them weren't just political, they were personal. The Variks, the Thalkor, and their new allies were vengeful. And they would not allow humanity's defiance to go unpunished. "I've reviewed the intel," Reyes said, entering the command deck with a datapad in hand. "The Thalkor have mobilized what's left of their fleet. It's heading toward the Lysira system. They're preparing for another offensive." Naomi didn't look up. "Give me the numbers." "They have more than 20 capital ships, along with several hundred destroyers and fighters. Our fleet has been depleted, but Earth has sent reinforcements. They'll arrive in 2 hours. She exhaled slowly. "We won't wait for them. We hit them before they can organize." Reyes raised an eyebrow. "You want to go in with just the Vigilance?" Naomi turned to face him. "The Vigilance has taken worse. We'll take the fight to them, disrupt their formation, then we'll pull back and regroup. They won't know what hit them." Reyes hesitated. "It's risky, Naomi. We don't know if Earth's reinforcements will make it in time." Naomi's eyes hardened. "Then we make sure it doesn't matter." The Vigilance slipped into the darkness of the Lysira system undetected, its stealth systems at full capacity. The crew worked in silence, each person aware of the stakes and the risks. The moment they emerged from the shadows, the enemy would be ready. They had to strike first, fast and with precision. "Target locked," Reyes said, standing at the tactical station. "We've got a direct line to the Thalkor command ship. They're too distracted by their own preparations. We strike now, we cripple their leadership." Naomi nodded. "Make it count." The ship's weapons systems powered up, a low hum vibrating through the deck. The Vigilance leapt forward, cutting through the darkness. Explosions rocked the enemy fleet as Naomi's orders rang out, each one executed with brutal efficiency. The Thalkor fleet, caught off guard, faltered. Naomi watched through the viewport as their capital ships began to disintegrate under the onslaught. But then, from the corner of her eye, she saw it. A bright flash in the distance, a signal from the reinforcements. "Earth's fleet is here," Reyes said, voice tinged with relief. Naomi didn't respond. The battle was far from over. The Thalkor fleet wasn't broken yet, And now the Zalari Dominion ships were entering the system, their heavy guns trained on the Vigilance. "Captain!" Reyes called again, urgency in his voice. "The Thalcor flagship is moving into position. If we don't take it out now—" "I know," Naomi interrupted. "Get us in range. We finish this now." The Vigilance surged forward, weapons blazing once more. This time, there was no hesitation. No second thoughts. It was do or die. With a final, decisive strike, the Thalcor flagship erupted in a brilliant explosion. The Vigilance pulled back, the crew breathing a collective sigh of relief. The enemy fleet scattered, broken and disarrayed. Naomi stood silent, watching the wreckage, her face set in stone. The war was far from over. But humanity had sent its message loud and clear. And she was ready for whatever came next.